Okay, thank you for your patience on that, Andy. Thank you very much for your work in getting that to us. Good afternoon, and of course, certainly welcome everyone here for our September the 11th, 2018 council meeting this afternoon. You know the spiel. We're web streamed, we're televised, and if you have a device like I have, make sure it's silenced. That would be wonderful. Are there any disclosure of pecuniary interest to declare? Item 3 is the approval of agenda. We have some changes that were just placed on your desk. So what I'm going to do is just read the motion, and then certainly if you wish to discuss anything here. It's been moved by Councillor Oliver and seconded by Councillor Wells that the closed session be moved on the agenda to be heard after other business this evening. It'll be the last thing on the agenda. It'll be item 15. And I'm not going to read all of this. I'm going to say that 15A, of course, will be off-road vehicles for staff report. Staff report on bylaw enforcement issues is there. We are going to have item 15C, the county solicitor memo. And then item 15D will be a verbal update on a privacy issue. So that would be the motion without reading the details, which I'll do later as we go into closed session. Any discussion on these changes? Those in favor? So we will move our closed session with those additions to the end of the agenda tonight. That is carried. Thank you very much. I am on item 5 now, over the page to our consent items. There are 3 listed. I do have a motion to approve them, 3 of them presented. Is there any member of council wishes to have anything removed for discussion? I'll read the motion. You can let me know if you change your mind on that. Moved by Geisen, seconded by Oliver, that consent items A through C be approved and presented as follows. Report CS 1831, that's the MTO legislative requirements that we received. That is information in that the approved 2018 levy supported operating budget be amended to include $2,200 to cover the medicals and knowledge testing components associated with volunteer firefighter DZ recertification. B, that staff report BW 1849 recycling process contract update be received as information. And finally, C, that report PW 1857 be received as information regarding replacement of our Norfolk County boundary signs. Any discussion on the motion? Yes.
Thank you, Mayor Luke. I just wanted to make a comment on the waste collection route. I just did make a note on that, and I know there's concerns in the downtown about the garbage being left too long, and this helps to address that partially, not totally. But the other part is it just covers a part of the downtown. It needs to cover all of the downtown. But the biggest part is the enforcement, and I know we're going to be talking about that later on, but there is no proactive enforcement and for people putting their garbage out sooner than later, or when it's supposed to, according to the bylaw.
Thank you, Councillor Black. I just want to remind you, in future, if you wish to speak on one of these items, please ask the chair to have it removed. Councillor Columbus? No, go ahead, sir. I've extended the courtesy here, so I'm going to do it to you. Well, I wondered if there's any discussion on the motion. I mean, that's kind of procedure on a motion. I just don't simply read it and move it second and pass it. But do you wish to make a comment?
Mr. Baird, please.
Yes, thank you. Through the mayor, Councillor Columbus.
yeah, those signs need a full refresh. They've really faded. So what you see before you on page 17 is what each of the new gateways will look like. I apologize, it's not in color, but it's that Norfolk green. As mentioned in the report, look at your new business cards, you can see that green Pantone that's selected for that. So yes, those field to fork, I believe the signs, the Ontario's Garden, those will come down, and this is just a refresh.
Luke, I'm sorry if I was out of order or
Go
anything,
ahead, go ahead, let's move forward.
But bit of confusion for me. I thought that if you want to discuss it and ask questions, you would pull this. But when you have a motion, you can make comment on the motion. So I'm seeing, no, I was wrong. I should have had that pulled to be able to say what I said. I'm looking at the
Keep going.
county manager, CAO.
It's okay. I'll get clarification from the clerk. I will be very surprised if I can read a motion and call the question without any discussion. But I'll check with the clerk. But as a courtesy, we had come to the consensus, this council, that we would lump consent items, and if you wished to speak to one, you would ask that it be pulled. Okay, so go ahead, and then I'm going to call the question.
But I'm still confused here.
Well,
You know, I thought if you wanted to discuss and debate, you would pull it. But when you have a motion on the floor, any motion is open for a councillor's opinion. And that I was voicing my opinion, but if I am wrong in the future, I will pull it. And could I have seen the CAO shaking his head. I wonder if maybe I could ask through you to our CAO for his opinion on my question.
I certainly will allow that. And my comment is simply, I have never read a motion that's been moved and seconded in the council meeting and not asked for discussion. And otherwise, I would make the appearance that I'm ramming this through.
Yeah.
Mr. CAO, do you wish to make a comment on this? You may.
The purpose of the consent item element of the agenda is to take non-controversial routine business matters and to deal with them expeditiously. Staff, every single time there's a guess made by staff, we think, well, that matter's not specifically contentious, no one's going to have much to say about it, let's put it in consent. The idea being that with a single motion, you could pass, if we have 3 things this week, it could be 10 things next week. If none of them are of specific interest, one motion, move to approve all 7, all 10, and this week all 3. Second, debate, there really wouldn't be any because that's just a procedural, we pass and on we go. No, the only thing you're debating is whether you're approving them, and you don't need to debate that because you haven't spoken to them. You haven't decided to pull any to talk about. Now, it will necessarily be the case that staff will guess wrong. We'll think, well, you don't want to talk about waste collection, and we're completely incorrect about that, and you do, in fact, have some issues you'd like to, so any one of you has the right to pull that so that he or she can speak to it, and we'll speak to it like any other matter. So it's a guess by staff to try to expedite part of the process. The notion is anything you want to speak to, you pull at the front, which makes more sense when there's 10 or 12, but at any rate. So the motion, when it's on the floor, should just be passed without comment because you've all already agreed you don't want to talk about any of it. You've read the reports, you have no questions, on we go. That's the concept. We haven't quite nailed it down, but, you know, we're getting there.
Oh, okay, you know what, that does add clarity, and anytime I have a note on these, I will ask to have it pulled, so I apologize for not fully understanding, so thank you for the clarification.
Yeah, no apology needed. Are you okay now? I'm still going to talk to the clerk, but not right now. If there's no other comments, those in favor? Those opposed? Okay. He's reading the procedural bylaw. I know what he's doing. I'm sure if I'm wrong, he'll be talking to me at break time. Thank you. It's carried. Staff reports, please, page 19. We'll start with staff report CAO 18-34. This is the staff council relations policy. What do you, didn't even see you over there. Okay, Mr. Griselle, if you would present your report, that would be appreciated. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. From a high-level perspective, this report and policy is really to fulfill a new provincial requirement. So the province is requiring us to have a policy in place by March 1st. But it goes without saying that a positive staff-council relationships benefit everybody. In the broadest sense, council-staff relations mean an open and respectful dialogue between staff and council. As a corporation, we achieve our best results when staff understand council's objectives and desires. As all staff serve at the pleasure of council, understanding what council as a body wants is very helpful for staff to achieve our objectives, and keeping an open line of dialogue and respectful mutual relationship is really critical towards that. So it makes sure that we stay on the same page. In the context of this report, there are a couple interesting things that council can consider. Firstly, you could consider the option of simply forwarding this to the next term of council. I'd suggest that that's probably not the best option, because we're going to have a new council with a lot of new people on it, and I don't think that they will be in their first couple months as up to speed as you are currently right now. So I really think this term of council is better positioned to actually gauge and make a decision on this policy. The other thing that you could do is you could send me back to write a much more limited policy. There's some general danger with writing vague policies in relation to things that will be enforced by the Integrity Commissioner. There was one good example that Rick O'Connor used, he's the clerk and solicitor for the City of Ottawa, of a municipality where a mayor got forward and was talking about the positive role of women officials in the elected officials in the municipality, and he missed one person, one councillor who was in attendance, and a party filed a complaint to the Integrity Commissioner. It wasn't actually the woman who was missed. It was just a third party, and the Integrity Commissioner essentially launched a $10,000 investigation into the matter, even though in the interim the mayor had gone to his council and apologized publicly for missing that person at this meeting. So the end result of that Integrity Commissioner's $10,000 investigation was that the mayor should apologize. So that had already occurred. So you can understand a lot of Integrity Commissioners are lawyers. They will take a literal view of, I love lawyers, Mr. CAO, my boss, but they will take a very literal interpretation of any policies or bylaws that we have. So we really need to ensure that there are very clear terms of engagement on all things, and staff council relations is one of those things. So, and this policy is also not something that I really took a lot of time writing myself. I really stole it from the City of Ottawa, and several other municipalities are doing similar things, and we always like to joke that there is certainly no such thing as plagiarism in terms of bylaws or policies. So just to give kudos to the people that actually did most of the work on this, we aren't going to be unique in the context of Ontario if we adopt this. And there's some benefit to that as well, because our eventual Integrity Commissioner, who we are going to RFP for, will be able to review the decisions of Integrity Commissioners in other municipalities and directly apply a lot of what happens there to what happens here. And with that, I'll try my best to answer any questions council might have.
Turn this on. Questions for staff? Councillor Brunton and Councillor Black.
Thank you, Mayor. Excuse me. Thank you, Mayor Luke, through you to Andy. Andy, I heard you mention the Integrity Commissioner a few times there, and I guess we as council are going to hire an Integrity Commissioner. So we as council can get rid of the Integrity Commissioner if we're not happy with his performance. Does that make sense?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, there's actually only one person that, within the bylaw that council's approved, I think the only person that could fire the Integrity Commissioner would be myself. So council, after you appoint him, The CAO cannot even, so I have to evaluate, and the only reason I would do it was because of poor performance. But there is that measure in place, whereas if we do get a real sore thumb, we're going to get somebody great, but if we do get somebody sore thumb, then they're going to be under my review to do it, but it's just to ensure that they can operate in their office impartially.
Well, I guess, and when you mentioned the case in Ottawa, where the third-party issue, and I guess my point is, if we spend $10,000 for something that's stupid, and I'll use that word, then if that were the kind of results we get from our integrity commissioner, I'll be asking you to get rid of him, plain and simple. That's my, maybe I'm using that as a poor example, but if we hire him, and you are responsible for him, and I realize he's got the leeway to look at things that we might do wrong or whatever, but he has to do his job too, to our satisfaction, I would hope.
Through you, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, I would not be overly concerned there. When we do the RFP, both myself, the county solicitor, and the CAO and the deputy clerk will be sitting in, and we will be interviewing everybody. So we're really going to be focusing on making sure that these integrity commissioners have the past experience and also the general political acuity, because that's really important, especially with a municipality our size. We don't want them chasing after every minor issue that arises. They really have to be savvy that it's only the big issues that we want to dig in and delve into. We don't want to spend a lot of time on the small fry stuff.
And would he be on a contract, or is that, once we hire him, he's, he's on a retainer, if I remember right? That's the idea behind it, like, am I correct, like 2 years, 3 years, how will that work?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, it would be, I believe the term is for a 5-year term,
Okay.
but we do anticipate that it may be a law firm that puts several principals up. So we could have several selected people who qualify as our integrity commissioners that would provide the service on an as-needed basis. But we would make sure that it's not just anybody from that organization, that it's specifically people that we review their CVs and approve of.
Okay, thank you.
Very much, Councillor Black.
Well, just the one thing, and I don't really have any questions. It's just, I wondered if you were cutting and pasting, Andy, on number 4, policy context 4.1, that we can blame the municipality of Ottawa for misspelling behavior.
Sorry, we
The
should have used,
American way,
yeah,
you know,
we should have used the Canadian spelling, sorry.
well, it's just, I know maybe some people think it's just, to me, our language, it's different, and nobody's perfect, mistakes are made, I understand that, but I don't know, I guess maybe I'm overly sensitive to it. I think it's part of our culture, the way we spell.
Councillor Columbus, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm looking at page 24 of our agenda package, and it's under number 6, the procedural bylaw, where it's in italics. It talks about no member shall speak disrespectfully of the reigning sovereign or any royal family member or the Governor General, Lieutenant Governor, or any person administering the government of Dominion of Canada, the Province of Ontario, or the Corporation of Norfolk County. And what I'm wondering, there are times when we get into dispute with the province of Ontario about downloading and different things. Is that considered disrespect? I guess it's for the CAO, you know, where we challenge the province and say we don't like what they're putting down onto us. And I guess probably if the City of Toronto uses the same phrase as what we've got here, perhaps they are in the wrong. I don't know. Comment from the CAO.
The language is chosen in that section so as to prevent ad hominem attacks. So what's acceptable is, this is a really stupid policy. What isn't acceptable is, you are really stupid. The difference between, or you can criticize the workflow, the general policy directions, the general thrust of a government, but we're not really supposed to attack the characteristics of the sitting premier, the MPP, the local staff rep. So therein lies the difference. This will not curtail the capacity to agree or disagree with Her Majesty at the federal level, at the provincial level, or otherwise.
Thank you. Anything further from council? Councillor Oliver, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm looking at page 21 of the agenda, which I guess is the first and second page of the draft policy. And one of the areas that I've always found a little bit uncomfortable for me as a councillor is my opportunities or I guess that would be as good a word as any, but my ability to speak to an individual staff person and make a request. So it's actually on page 22, I guess, those 3 paragraphs at the top that are the topic for this question. And my question to the clerk is, Andy, I like that wording because that doesn't seem to preclude me from speaking to an individual staff member and asking about the status of this bit of work or that bit of work. And that staff member, if he or she is unable to respond to me, has the responsibility to pass it up the line to their supervisor or to the department head. Has that wording been around for several years now as part of our previous code of conduct? And so this is just restating something that we've been following corporately already, or is this in fact new wording for this new policy?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I'd suggest it's new wording. We did have some other wording prior that related more to, I'd say, almost the media policy and other areas that could still be in effect, that was kind of more directing people up to people who regularly speak at council meetings to get their answers. So this is a bit of a different change on the wording.
I'm quite satisfied with this wording, Mr. Mayor, because I didn't interpret it as prohibiting me from doing so. It just lays out what could or would happen if the staff member is either unable or uncomfortable taking direction from me. And I think that's a good thing. I'm okay with it as a councillor, and hopefully staff will feel comfortable with it as well.
That's a good point. I agree with that interpretation of that paragraph. Is there anyone else wish to speak, ask questions to staff? I have a motion in front of me. I'm going to read it, and then I'll ask for a mover and seconder if you so choose. That report, CAO 18-34, respecting staff council relations policy, be received as information, and that this policy respecting staff council relations be approved. Do I have a mover seconder for this? Councillor Sonnenberg has moved. Councillor Black has seconded. That we do receive as information and approve. Discussion on this motion. Those in favor? That is carried. Thank you. And Andy, thank you for that. I believe page 27. Yes, staff report 1853 is found on page 27. Long Point Causeway and Bridge Class Environmental Assessment and Repair Status. Mr. Baird, if you would, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The purpose of the report here is to provide council an update with the expenses to date relating to the emergency repair of the Causeway Bridge, and as well to outline the next steps for the reconstruction of the road and bridge in 2019. If I could turn the page to 28, middle partway down, is a summary of the costs. If you recall, back in the summer, we had to engage an engineer to help us guide us through the process to find a suitable temporary replacement. Those costs are $48,200, and the company of Robert M. Simon was the selected contractor to purchase and install a used rig mat, which is the bridge component that goes over top of the existing failed structure. The total cost to date then are $347,900 for that work. It's an unnecessary evil, but nonetheless, that cost is there for your information. The second part of the report is really to talk about what happens next. A lot of people in the Long Point area, it's a critical piece of infrastructure. The municipal class environmental assessment work was completed in 2017. and we've recently received the results of that. Council has been provided an electronic copy of the executive summary, and the full document is available at both the Delhi and Simcoe offices and as well at Port Rowan Library for anyone interested in looking at the findings and recommendations that come out of that. Staff's intention to use the colder months ahead to prepare a request for proposal, which would provide engineering services to help design the bridge and the roadway so that we are construction ready or tender ready in the springtime to take advantage of an early start. The funding for the project is $3.75 million for the asphalt resurfacing of the road component and $6.7 million for the bridge. And both of those projects have been realigned to 2019 so they can occur at the same time, economy of scale. With that, I'm glad to answer any questions.
Thank you very much. I will start with Councillor Brunton, please.
Thank you. Thank you, Mayor Luke, and through you to Chris. Chris, I'm sorry my back's to you all the time here.
No
but,
problem.
on page 29, I kind of caught my eye here, and I realize there are estimates like on the, I guess you call it the third paragraph down, the pricing for the roadway, 3.7, and the bridge. And I guess my question, when you do an RFP for this, will you be looking at possibility of I'm assuming to keep traffic going, you're going to have maybe a Bailey Bridge or something on the, I don't know what the alternative traffic issues will be, but I assume we got to keep it open for the public. But my question is, I don't have a problem with the asphalt, the roadway, but the bridge at 6.7 sounds excessive. Are you looking at in your RFP for like multi-plate or precast, those kind of things? Are you going to ask for that?
Through the mayor, I think we'll leave that up to the engineer. Obviously, we want to make sure that whatever is replaced, has a nice long life expectancy. But we'll rely on their designs. We will take that forward to them. We want to do something that is also not going to break the bank. We want a good bridge structure, whether that means multiple box culverts or multi-span, likely not a single span just because it's too broad. So there will be piers and so on. We'll rely on their expertise to come up with a design that we will ultimately support and council will approve.
So what is the span on that bridge? It's not that, not that big. Is it not even 100 feet, is it?
I believe it's close to, it's about 30 meters, so plus
Okay.
or minus 100 feet.
Okay, and as far as both projects, bicycle lane?
As part of the Class EA, the recommendation there is to provide bicycle lanes that are like a widened paved shoulder, which is common. This council and previous councils have supported those for active transportation. There was some thought about putting something in the marsh, a separate boardwalk or a pathway system. The only problem with that is we get into federal lands, the marshlands, the Canadian Wildlife Services. To involve that process, it would take literally a decade to figure that out. So using our own road allowance, we think we can have a nice wide platform with sufficient hard surface paved shoulders that can accommodate pedestrians and cycling.
Okay, and I guess again, Mayor Luke, if I may, so the 6.7 million for the bridge is just I'll use the word a ballpark figure for now until you get your RFP out.
That is correct. I mean, it's a big number for sure,
Yeah.
but it's all going to come down to the tendered prices. We're going to, we'll do the best we can with an early start. Hopefully we'll get an aggressive bid for that. The challenge with the bridge work, of course, is work in, on, over waterways. There are time limits when we can and can't be there, so we want to make sure that the timing is take advantage of the best possible timing.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Brunton. Councillor Black.
Luke, thank you very much. And just to say right off the top, I know that this is, it is a priority, this bridge, and the road. And just like Port Dover, that was a priority. All of a sudden, the water mains started blowing up. And my question is, my concern, I guess, is I know when it happened in Port Dover, I looked at what our total urban budget was for roads. All of our urban areas was around $10 million. And that budget for Port Dover took up that whole budget, but was phased over 3 years. Still, it ended up bumping roads in other in urban centers. It put them off. An example was Holden and Ave and Simcoe. So, like my question, I know this is a bridge, it's not urban center, and it's the causeway, maybe that's different. Maybe it's either an answer from James or yourself. I'm worried about doing this all in 1 year, whether or not we can do the bridge first, because that's the most important thing, and maybe the causeway the second year, like a phasing thing. So we're still able to do work in other communities throughout Norfolk County. So that's my question through either James or Chris.
Okay, through the mayor, thanks. Those are good questions, absolutely, Councillor Black. This is critical infrastructure for Ward 1, Long Point. It is a big ticket item, but please be assured, I know we always think Norfolk, but I know you are also hearing from your constituents. Be assured the capital project for 2019 is quite robust, and you see projects in all areas of Norfolk County. So this one has been moved forward. It did show further out, but we believe that to do it all at the same time, there should be no problem with that. And we think we get economies of scale, whether we can get a singular bridge road construction bid, or if it goes to two companies, there's going to be coordination that way. But again, be assured, this won't be an impact for other areas.
Okay, I'll take that as your assurance and hold you to it there, Chris. Second question, if you don't mind, to do with the eco passages, and was the president of the Biosphere when we first started looking at the causeway, repairing it and doing the I guess we had sort of high ideals of putting a boardwalk through the more sensitive areas. That turned out to be very costly. But the eco passages, what's going to happen with them with the road construction? Will they have to come up and out? Will they be replaced in the same way? And will they be done at Norfolk County expense versus the Biosphere?
Through the mayor, the eco passages are there to stay. Obviously, they're only a few years old, so they can fully stay in that location. It would really come down to the design of the roadway and how that all worked together. We consider that infrastructure that's in place. If it needs to be tied into the new roadway, it will be. At this point, we're certainly not going back to the Biosphere for additional costs. That project is done and complete, and this is the county's effort to rebuild the roadway.
Okay, thanks very much. Appreciate it.
Councillor Oliver, please.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. My question kind of relates to Councillor Brunton's questions a moment ago, Chris. And again, this is part of the new portfolio that you are handling now as our GM of Public Works. And knowing you, I'm sure you recall this and are aware of it. But I, again, just would like to remind staff, as we're going to our consultants to get a consultant to do the design for us, the option of having a prefab all-steel span structure that we know bridge companies like Algonquin Bridge and others that can do two-lane single-span prefab bridges. I think some of us continue to feel that may very well be a cost-effective, aesthetically pleasing, and easily designed and installed option. So just again, reminder, please ensure that that's somehow incorporated into the RFP for the consultant originally to do the design.
Any other questions? Chris, I have one, and there may be more. So, Chris, I've had different people that are very, very anxious to see this work completed and done next year. And I've had people say to me, like, why are we not looking at more designs than just simply two single lanes and a shoulder either way? And they're concerned about, if we've seen this summer with the Park closed down. We've seen bumper to bumper backed up all the way down to the Esso station, emergency vehicles. I think you've explained why the design that is presented here is the design to go with, to get on with next year instead of starting to negotiate for land from the federal government. But I think it's important if you would explain to us that the passing of this motion that we're looking at here is basically endorsing what the results of the EA that are now completed, and I believe it was Parsons that did that. And I know we've all got the electronic, and we all thank staff for that. But would you please just comment on the fact that with the passing of this motion, it's my belief that we will proceed with an RFP to design the road as the option that is laid out in that report. Anything you could add to that? I think that's an important point, that we are done our public meetings through the EA process. Please?
You're absolutely correct, Mayor Luke. The Class EA process is commenced in 2017. It's very lengthy. There's public engagement through the whole process. The authors of that of the EA process look at all sorts of options, from do nothing, which of course is not in the mix, to the whole 9 yards, if you will. They have to balance that with costs, looking at pros and cons, and through that whole process, they narrow down one preferred outcome, and that is what I've described as a new full width pavement with the paved shoulders all on one corridor. So that is what is being recommended. We're stating that here today in the report, that it will help us at least guide the RFP process for the engineering design work. There still is an opportunity, and I know, Mayor Luke, you have spoken to a few residents in that area. There is a stakeholder review period which is currently underway, and although it's more in the 11th hour, there still is an opportunity for input, and I'll pass that. We can speak afterward about that, but we are certainly moving this forward. We know it needs to be done sooner than later. So.
And my last question is much shorter than my first one, and that is, the motion does not trigger staff to get on with the RFP. There's engineering to do, but will that be a motion later to direct staff to do the RFP, or is that understood that you'll get that out as soon as you're ready with the specs?
Really, the intent, Mr. Mayor, of this report is just that our EA process, this is how it all falls together. So we will now use the findings once the review period is up.
Okay.
We will know what the design will look like, and then we will engage engineering consultants to help design the road and bridge work, which will ultimately go to tender. With closed bids, it will come before council for final approval.
So there'll be no further direction to have staff do the RFP. It will just fall into place, and then the results of the tender brought back. Thank you. I apologize for asking those questions, but I think they're important here in the process. Councillor Brunton, again, please.
Thanks, Mayor Luke, for letting me. Chris, I guess I'm a little bit confused here. I know you're going for an RFP, but in that RFP, and Councillor Oliver raised a point, I raised a point for the types of structure. So will that come back to this council, or like you talked about going right to tender with the construction? Like, are we going to see maybe some options for a structure? And
well, generally, staff would prefer to follow the process that council has approved, but I can see in this situation there's some interest to see what the design might be. So the RFP that we intend to initiate is just for the engineering design work.
Yeah.
And we'll see what those outcomes. There may be an option A, option B,
right,
which would be I would say less expensive, more expensive. We'll have to come up with that. I will certainly relay that along to Mr. Houghton, that we want to see a couple of options here. It doesn't just have to be the 401 standard bridge. That there may be some opportunities there to look at. They will do the design work and get the construction tender documents ready,
right,
that we would then issue for construction. So the pricing comes back for that to the next council for final approval, and there would be some perhaps input. We can keep council informed as to how that design work is going and what sort of recommendations might come out.
My only concern is, you know, I call it the normal practice of pouring abutments and all that is going to cost, it's a time factor. I think everybody wants that start to finish quick, right? And that's where I think the options are important, so, thank you.
Columbus, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Chris, will there be a bike lane, pedestrian lane on each side, west side and the east side, or just one side?
The plan shows that there is a paved shoulder on both sides of the road, so for each direction of travel for pedestrian and cycling use.
Okay, so does that mean then all those eco passages that are there, I forget how many there is, I think it's about 11, isn't there? Would they have to be extended then? Would have to have a contractor extend those eco passages? Or would we put a ramp over top?
Again, I'm not 100% certain. I've seen the eco passages personally, as have you. If they need to be lengthened in order to accommodate the wider roadway platform, that will have to happen, or perhaps they're sufficient right now. We'll see that come out of the design process.
I can see certainly where the cost is adding up when we're talking this project.
If I may, before I go to Councillor Black, in the EA report, I read it from front to back, the proposed bike paths, walking paths are 1.5 meters in width, much 5 feet from the, on the side. So that's a fairly good size, in my opinion, a good width to have bike paths. I have Councillor Black, please.
On the EA, I believe, I read it too, did I not see that there was a provision in there for a separate boardwalk? Like in the marsh?
That was an option.
A wooden option, yeah, it was an option.
That's correct. Through the mayor, there was an option that was certainly desirous from a number of people in the community, but the physical ability to do that and the ability to negotiate using the federal government land is going to be a huge undertaking, and it was the decision of Parsons through the EA process that not be pursued.
Right. It is unfortunate, I know that. And the cost for that, I think it was costed out in the report. I can't remember what the number was, but wasn't there, it was, again, a lot of money, millions. I don't have the EA with me, but...
Deal with that later, yes.
Yeah. Do you have a number there? No? Okay,
Find that.
yeah, that's right. I know it was a large amount.
It was substantial. Any other comments? Councillor Geisens, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through Chris, you're talking about a bike on either side, or a bike lane, or whatever you want to call it. What's going to happen with all the trees, because they have been holding that road up for a long, long time. So how are you going to, I guess, take the trees out and have enough room for bicycle lanes on either side?
Through the mayor, all of that has been looked at through the EA process. You're correct, those trees actually probably serve a purpose by helping to stabilize the structure of the road base, but they are at the end of their life. Routinely, branches are dropping. They're very close to the travel portion of the roadway, so there's a liability piece. More than likely, all of those will come down as part of the rebuild, but there's always the opportunity as part of that to do replanting and putting suitable trees in suitable locations along that corridor. That's all part of that final project.
So if you're going to take some of those trees out, you're going to have to dig pretty deep to get to some solid surface, so that's going to have to bring in gravel or whatever you're going to have to bring out to make it carry the load, I guess.
Yeah, quite possibly, yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, and again, the report's on my desk, but there's well over 100 and some trees to be removed at a cost of $90-some thousand, somewhere in that neighborhood. It's been a couple weeks since I read it, and a lot of figures in there. It's a good read. Anyone else on the report? Well, let's get on to the motion, see where we're going with this, if I may. It's been moved by Columbus, seconded by Height, that this report, 1853, the Long Point Causeway and Bridge Class Environmental Assessment and Repair Status, be received as information. And that council endorse the conclusions of the Class Environmental Assessment Report, rehabilitation of the Long Point Causeway from Lakeshore Road to Erie Boulevard, including the replacement of the Long Point Causeway Bridge over Big Creek as identified in the Notice of Completion published on August the 22nd, 2018. Discussion. Councillor Black, please.
Would like to make some comments and ask for a recorded vote on this, but I am supportive of this. I know it's a huge amount of money. It has to be done. I've had assurances that it won't affect the other areas of Norfolk County. On the one side, as I said before, I was the president of the Biosphere, and I know the discussions around the table at that time were very enthusiastic, looking at a boardwalk, which I think it would have been absolutely wonderful if we could have done that. You know, wearing that hat, I thought that was a great idea. Would have been fabulous, but then putting on the Norfolk County Councilor hat, looking at the cost already, and then adding an additional amount, it's just, unfortunately, I think it's just not feasible, but we still will have the bike paths, and as you indicated, Mayor Luke, they are substantially wide on either side to accommodate safely probably both pedestrians and cyclists.
Another discussion on the motion, Councillor Columbus.
Mayor, I too will support this motion, but I just wonder, when we tender for this project, if we could have an option whereby we only have one bike path, pedestrian path on one side of the road and not both sides. And I think that would save a substantial cost, because if we have to extend each one of these eco passages and put a asphalt pavement down, it's going to be quite expensive, bringing a lot of fill in.
I see Mr. Baird making a note of that. I'm sure there'll be some future debate on this project. Anyone else on the motion? Okay, you've heard the motion. Madam Deputy Clerk, if you would conduct a recorded vote, that would be appreciated.
Through the mayor, Councillor Brunton? Yes. Councillor Black?
Yes.
Councillor Wells? Yes. Councillor Sonnenberg?
Yes.
Councillor Height?
Yes.
Councillor Geisens?
Yes.
Councillor Columbus? Yes. Councillor Oliver? Yes. Mayor Luke?
Yes,
It's unanimous.
it's carried. Thank you. I'm on page 31 now. Our next staff report. This is 1856, the Federation of Canadian Municipalities grant application, and it is about municipal assessment management program. I know Mr. Johnson and Mr. Baird's name is on this report. Mr. Johnson, are you prepared to, you want to pass? Okay, Mr. Baird, if you would please give us your report.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. Council will recall lots of discussion about asset management and the importance of it going forward. New legislation requiring Canadian municipalities to develop proper programs and policies in order to be eligible for provincial and federal funding in the future. I'm joined tonight by Mr. Jordan Sangers. Jordan is your new manager of asset management. Jordan works in the Public Works office with me, and he also works very closely with James Johnson and the financial folks. Jordan's been with us a little over a month, and I'm really impressed how much work he's accomplished to get us good and ready. A lot of the cost for him to join our team is eligible for recovery through the an FCM grant. And so that he had every intention of making application. We had another year and a half to do that. And lo and behold, we heard most recently, well, we've only got a couple more weeks now. They've moved the deadline up. So Jordan has worked tremendously hard to get this report before you. We essentially need a supporting resolution that you would like us to pursue funding. So that's really the purpose of this report, is to get a council resolution supporting our grant application to FCM. With that, Jordan certainly is able to answer any of the technical questions if you happen to have any about the program. But that's all essentially we're looking for, is your endorsement so that we can get in under the wire and be eligible for grant funding for this first phase of asset management.
Thank you, Mr. Baird and Jordan. It's a pleasure to meet you, and thank you for being here. Are there any questions on this staff report? Councillor Columbus, please.
Mr. Mayor, I just wonder, how much did we pay to join FCM membership? I remember we had some debate over it. I know you and the CEO went to the meeting. Just wonder what the payback is on our investment.
Council will recall it was approximately $11,000, within $500 to correct in that.